Hello, I'm Chris Merritt, and with me is Patrick Moloney, the Chief Executive of Litigation funder LCM. Patrick, thank you for joining us.
No problems.
When people think about litigation funding, they think about class actions, but what I hear is that there's something else there, that class actions are not the main game.
Absolutely. So class actions seem to get the most attention from the press. They tend to be larger and sort of more high profile. But if you look at of LCM's portfolio of investments into litigation, you find that the vast majority is into commercial disputes and arbitration. And whilst we certainly do operate in the class action space, it's by no means the largest part of our business.
Why?
Look, class actions, we like as a company to have a balance between our investments into various sectors. So we actively sort of manage our portfolio of investments such that we go into commercial insolvency, arbitrations and into class actions. So we don't like to have concentration risk in one sector.
Now, the corporate side of things, tell me about that.
Look, traditionally, litigation finance was very much seen as a product that was utilised only by impecunious claimants, or claimants that couldn't really afford to pursue their own rights or litigation through the courts. And we all know that litigation is exceptionally expensive. But what we're now seeing is a definite move towards corporates who can afford to run their own litigation, but deciding that they really want to look at outsourcing the cost of that to someone else's balance sheet. So in very much the same way as they would use other corporate finance products, they're now looking to outsource that drag on their P&L, and in the same way as they might lease photocopiers or a fleet of cars, they're looking at an external source of capital to run their litigation.
I see, and using their own capital to run their business.
And pursue the business model that they're probably better at than actually, if you think about it as an investment in litigation, they're probably much better at doing telecommunications, mining, oil and gas, or whatever their core business is, than actually sort of investing shareholders' funds in a piece of litigation.
So by using outside capital, does this make it possible for companies to extract value from causes of action that were simply withering on the vine?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we encourage corporates really to look at their pieces of litigation as assets. Now, they're typically not of that mindset. Typically, they see litigation more as a liability and something that creates drag on their profitability as opposed to an asset. So we try and encourage corporates to look at them as an asset, and we provide a number of services, including monetisation of these pieces of litigation before the courts might adjudicate them. So we can make litigation far more efficient for a corporate.
And I imagine the other benefit is having an independent set of eyes, having a look at a case.
Absolutely, and not only just another independent set of eyes, but someone who their sole business model is looking at litigation and whether a piece of litigation is going to be successful or not. So if they look at us, we've been now investing in litigation solely for the last 21 years. So we think that we bring some particular expertise to looking at a piece of litigation and determining whether that piece of litigation is going to be successful and profitable. And we also look at it with the entirely dispassionate or forensic eyes. So whilst someone who might have been involved in the underlying circumstances which give rise to the litigation, we'll look at it through a particular prism, and we look at this purely and utterly forensically, and I think that's a tremendous strength.
So it takes the emotion out of things.
Absolutely.
I suppose that's a big advantage from a business perspective.
The other advantage that corporates get from utilising an external capital source is that your litigation spend inside a corporation is horribly inefficient, so it has to be expensed. It can't be capitalised against that intangible asset being the outcome of the litigation. So in any given year, whatever a corporation is spending on its litigation is eroding their EBITDA, which is in turn eroding their profitability, which in turn, if they're valued on a multiple of PE, it's eroding their valuation. So there's very, very good and sound economic reasons why you would want to outsource that spend.
Is this hitting home? Are general counsel getting this?
It's not so much general counsel don't resonate with it as much as what the financial controllers of corporations do, because they're much more keenly focused on the financial aspects of litigation and what effect that might have on cash flow, on profitability. So we are getting really good traction in terms of having conversations, and we are undertaking modelling exercises with a number of very, very large listed corporations in the Australian market at present. But I should say that the driver for this is really coming from offshore. So if we have an office in London which services the London market and Europe, we're getting a lot more traction up in those markets, but certainly Australian corporations are now seeing the significant merits and the advantages in this.
Is it one-off funding? Like, would a company just take financing for one particular dispute, or is it a broader thing?
What we are encouraging larger corporations to do is to allow us to bundle together larger amounts of litigation, and by doing that we can reduce the risk for the funder in terms of providing a capital source which is non-recourse, and by doing that we can reduce the cost of it. So to make it a whole lot more palatable than a single case investment for us. A single case investment for a funder has a binary outcome. You win or you lose, or you negotiate a profitable or an unprofitable outcome. And that's one of the reasons why it's an expensive product. But if you can spread that risk, across 5, 6, 7 pieces of litigation, you can bring the cost down, and that's what's really attractive to the corporates.
For a lot of companies, I imagine this would involve a complete flip in mindset, because for a long time they would have associated litigation funding with class actions, with being on the wrong side of that dispute. Now it sounds like what is happening is litigation funders, yourself anyway, are going to be the best pal of business.
Look, I think we're very much encouraging corporations to think about this more as a sophisticated corporate finance tool, I should say, as opposed to we're the enemy, we're sort of backing class actions which might be against them. And I think that is starting to resonate now. I mean, I think the market is maturing, and I think that class actions are part of our landscape now, and I think large corporates have got to accept that, and then try and look for the benefits that are coming out of our industry. And there's some very strong and compelling reasons why they should be using a non-recourse form of capital to fund litigation which would otherwise erode their profitability. It just makes so much commercial and economic sense.
And that argument about extracting full value from a cause of action that would otherwise be left to rot, that's pretty compelling from a shareholder's perspective.
From a shareholder's perspective, and it's a non-risk environment for shareholders and for the company. So our capital that we invest into a pool of cases like this is utterly non-recourse, other than against those pieces of litigation. So it's entirely risk-free from the corporate's perspective. It's a passive source of capital, so we're not in there interfering with the way that the litigation's run. So it's an incredibly good product for a corporate.
Looking forward, where do you see this market, this industry, in a year or two?
Well, I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing the transition from people who are using litigation finance not through choice but through need. In other words, they don't have the sufficient capital to pursue a claim, and we're seeing the transition across into people using this by choice, and that's really a tipping point, and that is going to exponentially open up such a large market for the litigation finance industry.